Welcome back to part 2 of painting the wolf on Pastelmat. As you can see, while you were gone, I painted the ears on this wolf. If you want to know how I did that, I have other videos on YouTube that show how I paint ears. And now what I'm doing is adding the underlayers of the wolf to build up the color of the fur before I add the final hairs on top. And I'm using a pale, it's a lavender gray and some brown to build up those colors there. Now the paper, if you recall, is burgundy. It's a wine color actually. So it's pretty dark. It doesn't show that how dark it actually is in the video. So it's pretty dark, but I still need to put some pastel down because pastel adheres differently to itself than it does to the raw paper. So we want to add some color. Now when you're adding color underneath, you can use several different ways to do that. You could use pastel pencil if you wanted to add color. Or you could use new pastels or perhaps Rembrandts or Girault's, my personal favorite because they're kind of soft. Art Spectrum would also be a good choice. But you don't want to use really, really soft pastels like Senneliers or Terry Ludwig's or something like that because they're just would fill up your tooth and you wouldn't be able to get the fur results on top that you would like to. So we're going to save the super soft pastels for later. And as far as pastel pencils go, you can use any kind you like or happen to have. I'm using CarbOthello's. They have a lot of really nice gray colors. They also have a lot of nice browns. I like Pitt pastel pencils a lot. I've only recently discovered them. They're very nice, as well as Conte pencils. Contes have a limited range of color. They don't have very many. And Derwents. I love Derwents. They have lovely pastel shades of color. So now I added in some pale gray, lavender gray, and I added in some brown. And I'm using my pastel pencil to add some fur. I'm using very, very sharp pencils, very light touch with the pencil, and I'm holding the pencil kind of on its side. I'm not using the point, but I'm holding it at an angle to the paper and just softly, lightly adding color. That is number 680 that I'm using right now, which is a nice flesh tone actually, but it adds a nice color on top of the brown areas of fur. Now I'm using a Girault to add in a little darker brown. It got a little light, so I wanted to add some dark color back in. And I'm using an ivory pencil now, number 105, to add some lighter, warmer hairs instead of a gray tone. It has an ivory tone, which is kind of nice to add different colors in with the hair. So I'm just going to build up the colors as we go along. Switching back to a gray pencil. This is speeded up 4 times, I believe. I didn't want to go too fast. I wanted to be able to see kind of what I was doing. I also didn't cut this video. I didn't take anything out. I left all of the footage in so you could see. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel, give it a thumbs up. Please write me and let me know what else you might like to see me draw or demonstrate. I really would like to share what I know and to help other artists become better artists. That is a white, I'm back to the gray pencil, but the pencil before that was a white charcoal pencil made by General. They make wonderful white charcoal pencils. I also use their dark charcoal pencil, which is what I'm using now. 6B charcoal to add some darker hairs back in. But their white charcoal pencil is just the best. You can use just another white pastel pencil if you have that. So I'm adding more dark hairs in. So I'm going back and forth, adding light hairs, adding dark hairs, until I get the wolf to look like I want him to look. Adding a little more dark in there. A little more ivory. It's up to you how many different colors or varieties of pencils you want to use. Now I'm using my blender, my paper stump, to just kind of blend everything together, which makes a huge difference. Now remember this guy from the last video. This is the Cretacolor Pastel Chalk. It's a little bit darker than the 6B charcoal pencil. Now this is a Girault black, and it's in a holder made by Intis, which can be purchased at Jerry's Artorama. And that one is a size 8, I believe. A good size to have is a size 10. It holds a lot of different pastel sizes. It will hold your new pastels as well as the Girouds. Now I'm using the stump to blend the black in. The reason I used the Giraud was because it's a softer pastel. The hair gets very dark in this area, the fur, so I wanted to put that black base in, which is what I used the Giraud for. Now I'm going to add a little more purple gray on his back and blend that into the area that is black. And now I'm adding a warmer color, kind of a yellow ochre type color, beige. I'm blending with my fingers instead of the stump. And you can see the paper holds lots of pastel. So now I'm using my white charcoal pencil to add some hairs in. Start defining this area to get it to look exactly like I want it to look. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but this is sped up 4 times as fast as I was actually painting, because I don't normally paint this fast. But when you paint, take your time. I hope you will experiment with this paper and with painting furry animals. Back to the Cretacolor again. Adding lots of darker hairs. So I'm adding individual hairs now, pulling them out into the lighter fur background that we added. That's looking pretty good. I'm also working left to right because I'm right-handed, and I don't want to drag my hand through an area I've already completed. So if I work from left to right, I can finish his back area before moving over to the right side of his face. I'm adding some brown Giraud now for the brown hair that's there and blending it in with my finger. I'm going to kind of create a vignette with this particular painting. I'm not going to paint his entire back all the way out to the edge of the paper. I actually haven't decided where I'm going to crop it yet. So now I'm adding more white hair. And it's okay to turn your paper around if you want to, so that you can move your hand. You can see it's kind of hard for me to turn my hand upside down. This is a new pastel. Now the new pastel is going to be softer than the pencils. So I want that hair to be a little brighter. So I used a heavier, softer color with the new pastel to add the hair in there to give that thick appearance of the double coat that the wolf has. Switching back and forth between my white and my gray colors. And adding some brown. Using my blending stick to make sure it's all blended together. And now I'm using the black. We don't want everything to look the same. So I want to choose areas to highlight and draw attention to. So I want sharp hairs in some areas, and in other areas I want it blended together. I want a soft appearance. I want to direct the viewer's eye with my strokes. So now I've gotten a very loose, I'm drawing the hairs very loosely. They're not as sharp at this point. I want the sharpest hairs really to be on his face. Using the Cretacolor and putting in a dark area under his muzzle, so that helps project the muzzle forward. So I'm blending it with my stump. And now I'm adding some lighter gray fur underneath that and blending it in. And now we're going to add more hair underneath there. I've added the hair under the chin, and now I'm adding the little hairs on top of the nose with my white charcoal pencil. So I'm just carefully adding those. I really don't want my wolf to end up looking like a porcupine with too many hairs. So I'm working on the right side of his muzzle. I'm outlining his mouth with the Cretacolor black. And now I'm using a new pastel to put in a fairly heavy layer of white. I'm blocking it in with the flat side of the pastel. And now I'm going to use my paper stump to blend that in. It blends very nicely. I like the paper stumps. When they get dirty, you can kind of clean them by running them across your sanding block. I'm adding the little hairs right on the edge and putting in the mouth. and adding hairs on the bottom side of his mouth with the white charcoal pencil. I have several sizes of paper stumps. This is the large one that I'm using to blend there, but I also have a very small one, which comes in handy. And I'm putting in the white hairs around his eyes to help create that distinctive mask that gray wolves have. Be careful that you draw your strokes in the direction that the hair grows on the wolf. And that would be true if you're painting a dog or a cat. Make sure that the hairs are growing in the right direction. It makes a huge difference. Now I've got the black Girault again. I'm making it a little blacker between the wolf's eyes. The hair there seems to be a little darker. Also pulling out the black hair, putting in that underlayer on the side of the face before I start adding those. Using my 211 New Pastel. To add some white hair, I'm rubbing that in with my finger. Up, back to my trusty stump, smoothing that in. As you can see, this paper takes quite a few layers. Okay, so I'm adding another layer that's going to go underneath these white hairs. So I'm using this, it looks like a black pastel, but it's not. It's a super dark brown gray that's going underneath. Now we're using a lighter purpley gray. So I can put those underlayers in before I add the hairs on top. So now I can pull the hairs out on top of that dark layer that I just added. So we want to add the things that are behind first so that we can put other things on top, which is why I added the background before I painted the wolf, so I could draw the hair from his ears up into the background. So put some darks in with a Cretacolor. He's really starting to shape up now. I keep my Cretacolor very sharp. You can sharpen it in a handheld pencil sharpener. You can also sharpen it on your sanding block by just rolling it around on the top and getting a nice sharp point. There's a lot of hair on a wolf. Takes a while to get all those hairs in. Now I'm using my little tiny stump to blend in the hairs underneath the chin. I tell you, one thing I don't like is to see when you're using the small stump again to blend in the edges of the hair. I don't want sharp hairs. I want them to look like they're growing out of the wolf, not just little lines all over his face. It's not very attractive. So the stump helps blend it in. Now I'm using a lighter gray pastel pencil to add I'm adding a middle value. It's pretty dark, but it's still a middle value between the black and the white on the fur of the face of the wolf. It makes for a better look. I thought it was a little too dark, so I found this gray pencil, which is number 726, CarbOthello, and began to add that. Now I'm adding lighter, medium gray hairs up into his forehead. Now I've switched to my white charcoal pencil. I also, in the last step, when I switched over, I added some browns, some background colors on the left side of the wolf to kind of blend the background into his back so that it wasn't so prominent. So I want the focus to be on his face. So I'm blending. That's my blending stump again. I want that to be nice, soft blend. Blending the hairs out into the background on the right hand side. That is a gray 259 new pastel you saw there briefly to add a dark gray value out on that edge. And some more gray, Girault purple gray. Very pretty. I put a little blue gray in there as well. Opportunity to add color. Blending, blending, making everything look very soft. Adding more and more fur to the wolf. Now I'm adding a little more background color of browns in closer to where the edge of the fur is so that I can pull my hairs on the outside of the wolf out. I like this. It's looking very nice. I'm using a light gray pencil to add those hairs. Begin to finish up the right side of his face. You might ask the question, well, what's the difference between using the Girault black, the 6B charcoal pencil, and the Cretacolor? One is just darker than the other. The Girault being a heavier, blacker pastel because it's softer. So where I want to get a lot of black, strong impact, I would use the Girault. I'm constantly adjusting and looking at what I'm painting. I want to add more hair on the left. Now I'm back on the right. Adding the lighter gray colors. It's always a good idea too, after you finish a painting, to kind of lay it aside and then look at it again and see if there's some things you want to change. So I want it a little brighter, so I'm adding some more new pastel, which is heavier and softer, brightening up that area. And adding more hairs. I will list the things that I use, the pastels and their numbers, in the description box on the video. We're just constantly making adjustments, looking at your work, deciding what do I need in different areas of your painting. Now I'm adding white. If you recall, excuse me, I was using a light gray on that side, on the right side, but I switched to a white pencil because the light hits the wolf a little brighter in that area. So I'm making adjustments. I'm looking at my painting and seeing what it needs. So over on this edge, on the right side, it needed whiter hair. So I added those, using the new pastel yet again to add it brighter, and the little tiny blending stump to blend it in. So I'm going a little brighter. And now I'm using the new pastel to make it even brighter, a little whiter over there. And using it's the new pastel in a holder. It's still the new pastel, but to hold it better, I stuck it inside one of the holders. And again, that's a number 10 size from Jerry's. Now I'm adding the whiskers. Don't forget to add your whiskers. Brightening up the little highlights in the eyes and on the nose. So we're getting near the finish now. Blending, blending. Adding a few brighter hairs. Now I decided to add a background. So I'm using my Girault to draw in some tree trunks. This is kind of fun. So I used a brown, then I'm highlighting the edges with a pale lavender. And it didn't show up like I wanted it to, so I got a lighter brown. And I gotta tell you, I'm just making up stuff. So I'm using a darker brown to add darker leaves, or not leaves, but tree trunks. It's winter. Now you don't have to add a background. I found this to be kind of fun. And now I'm using a red Girault to add that fall red color. And I'm adding a little green because green's a complement of red and that makes for a nice look. Adding a little more red and a little more dark brown. Now you could, as you can see, I'm using a pastel pencil to draw some finer branches. You could have done the whole thing with your pastel pencils. I'm liking the way that looks. So I'm going to call this painting finished. If you like it, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. See you next time.